In October 2016, in a dying coal town outside Harlan, Kentucky, a 28-year-old social worker named Michael Reeves was assigned to do a routine welfare check on a family that no one had seen in over 3 weeks. A mother named Judith Crowley and her 2 sons aged 9 and 6. And what made the case strange from the beginning was that the house phone still rang, the lights still turned on at night, and the neighbor kept reporting the sound of a TV playing cartoons through the walls. So Michael drove out on a fog-soaked back road where the trees closed in so tightly they blocked the sky, and reached a narrow gravel driveway that ended in a sagging white farmhouse with blackened windows. And when he knocked, there was no answer, but he could hear a faint rhythmic tapping from inside, like someone gently hitting wood. So he used the spare county key and stepped in, and the smell hit him first. Not the smell of rot, but the smell of damp earth, like a basement that had been flooded and never dried. And the living room was spotless, except for muddy footprints that led in a circle around the couch over and over again, as if someone had been walking in loops for hours. And on the TV was a children's cartoon, paused on a frame of a smiling dog. But what made Michael's stomach twist was that the sound wasn't paused. The cartoon laughter was still playing on a loop, even though the image was frozen. And when he called out Judith's name, his voice seemed to sink into the walls instead of echoing back. And that tapping sound got louder, coming from upstairs. So he slowly climbed the stairs, noticing scratch marks on the wallpaper at child height. Long vertical grooves like fingernails had been dragged down them. And when he reached the hallway, he saw that one of the bedroom doors was slightly open, and inside, he could see the edge of a mattress standing upright against the wall, which made no sense. So he pushed the door open and realized the mattress wasn't leaning. It was nailed there, blocking something. And behind it was a deep hole cut straight into the floorboards, a black pit about 4 feet wide that went down into the darkness beneath the house. And the tapping sound was coming from inside that hole, slow and patient, like knuckles knocking on wood from below. And Michael felt a sudden irrational certainty that if he leaned too close, whatever was down there would pull him in. So he backed away and went to the second bedroom, where he found 2 small beds made perfectly. But on the pillows were clumps of hair, one dark, one light, tied together with red thread. And beneath the beds were notebooks filled with shaky child handwriting, over and over again saying, "Mommy says don't look at it. Mommy says it wears our faces. Mommy says it comes up when we sleep." And at that moment, the front door downstairs slammed shut, even though Michael had left it open. And he heard footsteps walking slowly across the living room floor, wet footsteps, and someone humming a lullaby in Judith Crowley's voice. So he froze, realizing with absolute terror that Judith was either in the house or something was pretending to be her. And the humming moved to the bottom of the stairs and stopped, and a voice called up softly, "Michael, you came to help us?" Even though Michael had never said his name out loud. And then the tapping from the hole upstairs stopped, and a new sound began. The sound of something dragging itself upward through wood and dirt. And Michael ran, bolting down the hallway and smashing through a back window, slicing his arm open as he fell into the weeds outside. And from there, he watched in horror as the upstairs bedroom light turned on, and a silhouette appeared in the window that was too tall to be a woman and too thin to be a man. Its head tilted at an impossible angle, as if it were trying to remember how a human held their neck. And behind it, pressed against the glass, were 2 smaller faces, pale and stretched like rubber, wearing the exact expressions of Judith's children from the missing person photos, smiling in a way no living child ever could. And Michael screamed for help until neighbors came running. But by the time police arrived, the house was empty. No bodies, no blood, no hole in the floor, no notebooks. Nothing but 3 muddy sets of footprints walking in circles in the living room. And to this day, Michael has never slept in the dark again because sometimes, just as he's drifting off, he hears slow, patient tapping under his bed, as if something from beneath the floorboards is waiting for him to forget that it exists. In November 2022, in a quiet lake town in northern Minnesota called Pine Ridge, a 34-year-old 911 dispatcher named Claire Holloway was working the night shift when she received a voicemail instead of a live call, which was strange because emergency lines don't go to voicemail unless the caller is already dead or disconnected for more than 60 seconds. And the message was only 8 seconds long, but it made her hands go cold because it was her own voice whispering, "Claire, don't pick up. It knows how to sound like you." And when she replayed it, she could hear faint breathing behind her own words, slow and wet, like something with a blocked throat. And the call log showed the voicemail had come from a disconnected number that used to belong to a woman who drowned in Pine Ridge Lake 5 years earlier, after calling 911 saying someone was standing on the water outside her boat. And Claire told herself it had to be a prank or a system glitch, even though the timestamp said the message had been recorded 3 minutes in the future. So she ignored the chill crawling up her spine and kept working until another call came in from a payphone near the lake. A man screaming that he could see his dead wife standing outside his car tapping on the window, even though she had been cremated. And as Claire tried to calm him, she realized his panic sounded eerily similar to the breathing behind her own voicemail, like the same thing was using different mouths to speak. And before she could send help, the call cut off with the sound of something heavy hitting glass. And when police arrived, they found the man's car empty, with all the windows smashed from the inside, and wet footprints leading into the lake, as if someone had walked straight out onto the water. And that was when Claire's screen lit up again with another voicemail notification from her own number. This one longer, saying, "You already heard me once, Claire. Now you need to listen." Followed by the sound of a door opening and a woman crying in the background. And Claire felt her chest tighten because the crying was coming from the supply closet down the hall, the one no one had opened since a dispatcher named Marcy disappeared during a night shift 2 years earlier. So Claire slowly stood up and walked toward the closet, even though every instinct told her not to. And as she got closer, she saw water seeping out from under the door, like the floor was flooding from the inside. And the crying turned into gurgling, as if the person inside was drowning. And when Claire grabbed the handle, she suddenly got a call from her supervisor, who told her to get back to her desk because they had just received a report that Claire Holloway was seen walking into Pine Ridge Lake 30 minutes ago and never came back out. And Claire's vision blurred as she realized the timeline was folding in on itself, like something was replaying her life out of order. And she asked her supervisor to describe the woman who walked into the lake. And he said she was wearing Claire's red jacket and moving strangely, like she didn't know how to bend her knees. And that was when the closet door slowly creaked open by itself, revealing Marcy's bloated corpse standing upright, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut with fishing line, and water pouring out of her as if her body were just a container. And behind her, inside the dark of the closet, Claire saw dozens of pale faces stacked together, all of them wearing the expressions of people who had drowned in Pine Ridge Lake over the last 20 years, all of them breathing in perfect unison. And the voicemail on her phone started playing again on its own, This time, not in her voice, but in all of theirs layered together, saying, "We need your lungs, Claire. We're tired of the water." And Claire ran, screaming, out of the building into the freezing night, where she saw something standing on the surface of the lake, tall and thin and wrong, holding her red jacket in its hands. And when it raised its head, she saw it didn't have a face, only a smooth, wet surface that reflected her own terrified expression back at her. And the last thing the town ever heard from Claire Holloway was a final 911 call that recorded nothing but heavy breathing and the sound of water filling a room. And when search teams found her the next morning, she was standing chest deep in Pine Ridge Lake, alive but unresponsive, her eyes wide open, whispering over and over in dozens of different voices. It finally learned how to sound like us. And to this day, every few months, the Pine Ridge Emergency System receives a voicemail from a future timestamp, always from a disconnected number, always in the voice of someone who hasn't drowned yet. In August 2021, in a quiet logging town called Black Hollow in northern Oregon, where the forests grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground, a 29-year-old wildlife surveyor named Ethan Moore was sent to document a series of unexplained animal deaths deep in the Pinevale woods. And what began as a routine trip slowly became one of the most disturbing disappearances in state history. Because Ethan kept a detailed audio journal that was later recovered, and in those recordings, he described how he kept hearing something walking just behind him, no matter how fast or slow he moved, and how the footsteps never crunched leaves the way his did, but instead made a soft, dragging sound, like wet fabric being pulled across dirt. And on the second night, he recorded a low, whispering voice calling his name, even though he was completely alone. And the strange part was that the voice sounded exactly like his own. And when he followed it against his better judgment, it led him to a ring of dead trees standing in a perfect circle with no leaves and blackened bark. And in the center of that circle was a deep sinkhole that exhaled cold air like a breathing mouth. And Ethan said in his recording that he suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to step into it, as if something down there was calling to him and knew everything about him, including his fears, his memories, and his childhood home. And when he backed away, he heard multiple voices coming from inside the hole, all speaking at once, repeating his private thoughts. And when he ran back to his campsite, he found his tent ripped open and his equipment neatly stacked, as if someone had carefully gone through it. And that night, his recorder picked up hours of low chanting that investigators later tried to analyze, only to find the voices shifted between English and something unrecognizable, like no human language ever recorded. And the next morning, Ethan's final journal entry said that he had woken up to find muddy footprints circling his sleeping bag, and that when he followed them, they led back to the sinkhole, where he saw a figure standing at the edge that looked exactly like him, but older and hollow-eyed, and smiling in a way that made his skin crawl. And that double told him that Black Hollow had been stealing people for generations, copying them perfectly, and sending the copies back while the real ones were taken into the earth, and that the town itself was built around the thing beneath the woods to feed it. And as Ethan tried to leave, he realized every trail led him back to the same dead tree circle, as if the forest itself was folding around him. And the last sound on the tape is Ethan screaming as something grabs him and drags him downward. And when search teams later found his campsite, there was no body, no blood, and no sinkhole. Only a fresh set of footprints walking out of the forest toward Black Hollow. and townspeople reported seeing Ethan days later, smiling strangely and avoiding mirrors. And to this day, when hikers go missing in Pinevale Woods, locals swear they see them again, weeks later, wandering the town at night, not quite human, not quite right, as if something under the forest is wearing their faces and slowly learning how to live among us. In February 2019, in a nearly abandoned desert town outside Barstow, California, a long-haul truck driver named Daniel Holt called 911 from a gas station at 2:17 a.m., whispering that a woman had been walking beside his truck for the past 12 miles without ever falling behind, even though he was driving at highway speed. And when the dispatcher asked him to explain, he said he first saw her in his side mirror near a stretch of road where a fatal hit-and-run had happened years earlier. A pale figure in a white dress, keeping perfect pace with his trailer. And he thought it was a reflection or fatigue until she slowly turned her head and made eye contact with him through the mirror, her eyes completely black. And when he sped up, she sped up. When he slowed down, she slowed down. And when he finally slammed on the brakes, she stopped exactly beside his door, smiling so wide it stretched her cheeks. But when he looked directly at the road, she was gone. And that was when knocking began from inside the trailer, even though he was hauling empty cargo. Soft at first, then frantic like someone trapped. So Daniel pulled into the gas station and refused to open the trailer while begging police to come. But the knocking turned into scratching and screaming that sounded exactly like a woman being dragged across metal. And when officers arrived, they opened the trailer to find nothing inside except long, muddy footprints and one single wet handprint on the ceiling. And the dispatcher later testified that during the call, Daniel suddenly went silent, and she heard a woman breathing into the phone before the line went dead. And Daniel was never found. But 6 months later, his truck was discovered parked on the side of the same desert highway, with the engine still warm and the driver door wide open. And in the dust beside it were 2 sets of footprints, one belonging to Boots, and one barefoot set that walked in perfect straight lines until they vanished into the empty desert, as if the ground itself had swallowed whoever was walking there.